So how do you calculate how much you should pay a music teacher? It might be your first music teacher coming to work for you and you get paid X amount and you're trying to figure out, do I give them a percentage? Do I pay them for, lessons when kids aren't there? What are all those questions? How do we handle it? How do we build a fair teacher pay scale that's a win-win for them and for you and your business? How do we make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of? How do we make sure that your business is set up to not get screwed over, but is designed in a way so people really want to work for you and feel respected and paid well without taking too much than you can afford? We're going to tackle all those questions, and this comes from a larger training inside our Build a Music School membership. If you want to watch the full training, you can grab a free trial down below, and there's a few other cool freebies that you might want to grab access to today in the comments there. But you will like this video because it's going to cover really systematically what you shouldn't do when it comes to figuring out pay scales for your teachers and what you should do. And this comes from my experience of employing over 200 music teachers. And in part 2, which will come out another video here, we're going to talk about how do you handle those really tough objections when people challenge you and say, hey, you're not paying me enough and this is rubbish and I can get more elsewhere, and all those sorts of things, which do happen from time to time. And so we'll cover that in part 2. So this video here, we're going to jump to the training, and if you like it, watch the full video, grab the free trial link down below. But this is going to be really helpful whether you are trying to get your first team member or you're in a situation where you've got a few team members, you feel like you haven't set this up right, you've kind of guessed what you think you should pay people, or you've got an unfair system like paying on percentages or something silly like that. This is going to really set you right on the right path so that you can set something up that's going to scale and grow to be a win-win. Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about how to calculate a fair teacher pay scale. And so by fair, I mean it has to be fair for you and for them. And so in this video, I'm going to focus on 3 main things. I'm going to talk about what I don't recommend that you do. I'm going to talk about what I do recommend that you do. And I'm also going to talk at the end about how you can handle some of the challenges that you might get about your pay scales and how much you pay teachers. If you haven't been challenged about your pay before, it's going to happen. We all go through it, and so I'll give you some of the examples of how I talk to teachers about pay when I'm challenged by them saying it's not enough. So this is going to be really valuable for you. It's going to be a longer video, but we're going to go quite in depth, and I think you're going to find it really helpful. So let's start with what I don't recommend. The first thing is paying on percentages, and so this is the most popular one that I see often discussed in the BAM squad and other Facebook communities for music teachers and academy owners, and so this one will probably get most of my attention on the what not to do. But let's go through it, and I want to address a few different things. The first one is why do you think that's even a good idea? How did you come up with that idea of paying a percentage, and what data actually helped you make that decision? Because what I tend to see from people that do this is they have picked a number that they kind of plucked from thin air that they think sounds fair, or this is a number that I can say with a straight face to a teacher, and that's kind of how they kind of roll. And in my experience, no other businesses pay people this way. Next thing is what would be a good reason for that model. So a few things that make it sound comforting and nice is it's an exact number, and so the teacher agrees that they always get this exact percentage, so they know what the percentage is. As the business charges more in fees, their pay goes up because their percentage gives them a cut of that increase, so that's great for them. But we need to be careful because that could change very drastically. So if you just look at, and I pulled up some documents here, take a look at, this is year 1 of Good Time Music Academy, so all the way back 2009. So I've obviously blacked out the numbers, but this is all the expenses you can see down here for the first year. And so that's just in year 1. There's already quite a lot of expenses. Most of you will be paying things like that already. But now let's go to year 10, or is it year 11? And look how many extra expenses there are. So scroll all the way down here. It's a lot more, and it's growing as your school grows. And each of them, of course, all get more expensive individually. Now, another thing that happens as your music school grows is that everything gets more expensive, as I mentioned, but think of even things like wear and tear. So wear and tear on the instruments, more people are coming through, more damages happen, you have to cover them. Even right down to things like, I know it sounds petty, even toilet paper. Like when our school was, at its peak, you're spending so much on toilet paper, hand towels, all those things increase. And so that is all coming out of your margins. What if all the fixed expenses all rise, say rent, power, but you can't raise your prices for 3 months? Well, you have to absorb all that, right? And so I've shown you the difference you can have over many years. And the other thing that can happen as well is, what about if you have a big financial hit? We've all experienced something similar with COVID, and many of you have made sacrifices to retain staff, to bend over backwards, to put a lot of the extra hard work in yourself to maintain people. But there's other things that can happen. What if a $1,500 digital piano breaks and you need to replace it for lessons? Well, there's no percentage of that coming out for the teacher to cover. It's all you, right? What about like a weather storm? Maybe it's a hurricane or a snow and you have to cancel lessons for a day or a week. Well, that comes out of your income. The hit, the lost revenue comes out from you. So all of a sudden, all these things, they are not so fair when we just say, oh, we're just going to split the revenue here and here, because a lot of it is about risk. Where does the risk lie? And the risk actually lies more with you, because you are taking the brunt of the bigger challenges that could come your way in terms of financial hardship. So, of course, you've got the higher return possibility, but we're going to talk about that soon. So a couple other little notes I've got. What if you have to back pay or credit someone that's unhappy? We all have our rules and our terms and conditions that we try to avoid catch-up lessons, and you might say no refunds, we just give credits, but there's still those one-off things where you just kind of have to give a refund, or you would just be a real jerk. There are situations like that. And so these are things that the business has to absorb. And so as I've addressed, these all lead to a bigger risk for you. And so when we think of, oh, let's pay a percentage, that sounds really good to someone who has no idea about all those things that I've listed. And all the risk falls on you for that, because you have to keep maintaining that percentage, but you haven't factored in all the things that could go wrong. Let's move on to the next thing I recommend you don't do. I recommend you do not pay people per student that attend a group lesson. So you don't count up and say, oh, okay, there were 3 students in that group, so you can have $10 for each kid, and there were 5 in that group and 1 in that group. It's an absolute nightmare. And you also have things like missed lessons, credits, what if someone quits, and you actually need to just bring it back to, if the business is doing well, then you will do well. You and the teachers will do well. So as the business grows, and that's going to be my main little thesis through here, that's how you can build people's pay up. So don't pay people per student, per group. Administrative nightmare. It's going to be so time consuming. Next thing I recommend you don't do is don't pay people one rate for individual lessons, teaching one-on-one, and don't pay them a separate rate for teaching group classes. It's a logistical nightmare, which again is going to cause you to have to invest more in admin time to do all the maths, make sure you get that right, go back and correct it when you've got it wrong. It's a nightmare. That just costs you more and more money. Don't do that. Next thing that I recommend that I've seen in competitor schools in our area, don't do this. Don't pay everyone the same amount. That's not fair for the person that's come and worked for you for 3 years, and shown up to all those extra concerts and really invested their time. They shouldn't be getting the same amount as the person that's just started last week. It's not fair. So don't just go, yep, we have a flat rate of $25 an hour. That's not fair. So there's a whole bunch of things that I do not recommend. Let's move on to what I believe you should do and how we integrated things in our school and what we can learn from them. So the first thing that you want to have is you want to implement a pay scale, and this is something where you are showing people exactly how you measure pay, the levels that people can work through. And pay scales are important because it is fair. Like I said before, if someone's worked for you for 3 years and someone's just starting, you want to have people be able to see ahead and go, oh wow, if I work here for X amount of years, I can move up to this level, or if I do these sorts of things, or adapt and learn these sorts of skills, or take on these sorts of responsibilities, I can grow my income. And so you want people to actually see this right from when they come in for a job with you. You want them to be able to look at your pay scale, and I'll attach a document for you so you can check it out. Our one will be very old, and it won't be up to date, so don't copy it. Even minimum wage, I think, is now higher than the lowest bracket on the scale, so it's always going to be outdated, but you get the idea, the principle. The things that you're going to want to have on there is what the pay scale is, how you'll determine which level people will start at, sort of a rough guide based on maybe experience and level of investment you need to put into them to get them up to scratch to be able to teach at your standard of your school. And you need to define how people will move up the pay scale. Will you be moving people up based on a performance review every 12 months, 6 months? Will you just go up automatically? How will you do it? And so you can see on our one how we define it. And this is not some big, scary, long document you have to pour hundreds of hours into. It's pretty simple, and people get it. And so we would actually show this to someone right from the start in the job interview. So if we think that we like the candidate and we think that we want to be offering them a job, we would actually be giving them a copy of it and saying, hey, this is what our pay scales look like here. How would this line up with what you'd be expecting? And we can let them answer and see what they think, or say, hey, there's probably a lot to take in right now, but go away and have a read and think about it and come back with some questions, that sort of stuff. So having a pay scale is really good because it just really clearly defines, like, this is what we do, and it's based on what the business can actually afford. And as we do better as a business, as I've said earlier, the pay scale can move up and we can move everyone through the levels. So how do you go about figuring out what you can actually afford? Well, this is where you should be using your Build a Music School cash flow tool. You should know exactly what percentage of that pie chart is being spent on your teacher's pay. And so you are going to have a different number to me. I'll tell you what my number is, but it's not going to be the same, so don't try and aim for this number. Mine was 38%. That was my target for music teachers. Not administrators or managers, just the music teachers budget. I was aiming for 38%, and so often it would get up to 40, 41, and then we'd have to be a bit more careful, tone it back, grow a bit more, and but that was always the target. And so you need to figure out what is your percentage, and of course you're going to be using tools in the budget like the net profit calculator. You want to know, okay, we've got this much coming in, we need to include your salary first, so we need to take that out first because you're the one running the whole place. We need to have a net profit, and of course you want to be aiming for at least 5 to 15%. If you can scale it beyond that, you are doing better than 99% of music schools, which is awesome. And so you actually sort of start reverse engineering it and go, okay, well, if we earn this much money, if we start with 10% net profit, if we put in, I don't know what's fair in your country, a $50,000 salary, and then you've got your expenses. Now you can start looking and figuring out, reverse engineering it, what percentage you can be aiming for teachers. So there is a couple other things I want to add about that, figuring it out is, as I said, don't try and split the roles between a pay rate for group teaching and individual lessons. Just remember the job is teaching. Teaching 5 kids is not 5 times harder than teaching 1 student. If you work at any other service business, you don't get paid X dollars for this task and X dollars for this task. People want a stable job. They want to have dependable income and a rate they can do some maths and rely on, know it's going to be consistent, not be up in the air. You don't want people therefore knowing that they've got 2 different rates and then they are, oh, I don't want to do this thing anymore, or, and so it gets prickly because you've booked them a student for this type of pay rate and class, and they're like, no, I earn more doing this one, don't book me this, and you get into those sorts of weird, annoying things. So don't do that. We've talked about it a little bit already. Next thing that you want to try and do is you want to aim to pay better than the competition. So you want to try be aware of what others are paying and understand where you do sit in the market. So per hour, we didn't have the best pay, but we had the best jobs because we were able to pay people as employees 52 weeks of the year. They got holiday pay, bank holidays, sick pay, all those extra benefits, superannuation, and they had loads more hours, so the jobs were just way better. So they might have been on a few dollars less an hour, but when you look at it on the scale of a year, they were earning probably tens of thousands more. So as you look at competitors, think about not only what their hourly rate is, but are they contractors? Are they employees? What type of hours are they really giving people? Are people showing up for shifts where they are working, say, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m, but they end up with lots of breaks in the middle where they're not paid? That sort of stuff. So do your comparison there. Figure out how many weeks a year they're actually paid. Is it 52? Is it 40? Is it 28? And just an idea of how you'd actually find this out. There's no real amazing scientific way to figure this out. It's pretty much just word of mouth, talking to teachers that that work at other places, or looking at job advertisements people may put up on their websites, all that sort of stuff, just trying to find out, hey, what do they pay there? That's pretty much how we've found out, just talking to people. They all know someone, they've got a friend that works there, they're prepared to tell you. It's good to know. And you can also say things like, hey, are you aware of what they pay there? We don't know ourselves. We want to make sure that we're the best place to work, and part of that means knowing what other people are paying and how we compare. Could you ask so and so, or do you have any idea? So if you do it in that way, you can usually get the answer. So there is a few more reasons. Another thing to just pull back to is the idea of pay goes up as the business can afford it. So we don't want to pay anything in anticipation of growth happening. We want to be reactive instead of proactive on that part. There's going to be exceptions, but say you are moving from one-on-one lessons to group lessons. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should go, oh, we're going to earn more money doing this, let's put everyone's pay up straight away. You want to be looking at how you can be paying the money after you've earned it. Don't spend the money before you've earned it, because the proof is actually the money in your bank account. And so don't just build all these spreadsheets and think, yeah, this is what's exactly is going to happen, so we'll just commit to this. That's just spending money before you earn it. It's not smart. You wouldn't encourage any of your teachers to do that in their personal life. Don't do it in your business, because it's the same thing.